With Fiona and Cake coming out at the end of this month, I thought it was finally time I go through Adventure Time. Years ago, I planned to review the show episode by episode, but let's be real, this show is ridiculously long. It's about 7 seasons total, I believe. I mean, on the set, it's listed in order seasons 1 through 6, and then it just lists the final seasons. Because it's kind of like Futurama, where Futurama has 2 different ways you could view the show. In production order, so like certain episodes are part of different seasons, and if you watch it that way, and then there's the way it actually aired, which is broadcast order. I just prefer to watch it in the way it's listed in these DVD sets. There's not really any continuity issues with that necessarily for the most part, because all the episodes are in order. They're just all not. Just the final seasons are not actually listed as what final seasons they are. They're just listed as the final seasons in the set. And I will say, this is a really nice DVD set. You got this awesome case. Very thick and sturdy case here. You get, these different read-ups of the characters. And you get all the episodes listed on this book, on these book-style pages. And then you get to the middle of the book. You can open it up, and you get this little pop-up of the Land of Ooh. You get the Ice Kingdom right here. Shit, I don't want that's a problem, is the disc fall out. But you got the Candy Kingdom, and you got Finn and Jake's house. You got all that stuff. Very neat stuff. Really well put together box set here. With original art and cool stuff. And unlike most Cartoon Network shows that get physical releases, there are tons of bonus features right here in this back disc. There is an updated version of this coming out, which I think does include Distant Lands within the set. But here's what I'll just say about that: who cares? Because Distant Lands you can buy. So this will cost you about $60-$80 somewhere in there, right? But these are not HD Blu-ray quality. Meanwhile, like Distant Lands, you can get for about $15 on Blu-ray, all specials on Blu-ray. So if I were you, I'd just pick up this version and then get that separately. But let's just talk about the show about itself. Adventure Time was a great show. I loved for a long time. Let me explain my little story about Adventure Time. I don't know what exactly happened with this story, but I used to love Adventure Time. Adventure Time came out on Cartoon Network, and you have to understand, Cartoon Network was in a terrible time when the show came out. For the first time ever in their history, they had actually decided to produce live action programming. And to understand why that's a bad idea, take a look at the name of the damn channel. Cartoon Network. Oh shit, a channel for cartoons making live action shows doesn't make sense, right? And yeah, it didn't make sense. It did really bad. Everyone hated it. But yeah, I understand why they did it, because in the TV landscape, like Nickelodeon and Disney Channel had animated shows that did well. I mean, Disney Channel had Phineas and Ferb and stuff that aired a lot around their live action stuff going on. But at the end of the day, it still was not as popular or as easy to produce as their live action stuff. So of course they wanted to do that. And I think if Cartoon Network rebranded and it still had animated content on the network, it would have been fine. But because what they did at this time is they got rid of all their animated content, and then they just had those live action shows while still calling themselves Cartoon Network, it didn't really work out. So I'm not saying that I'd love if they still had live action programming. I would say, if they could have had a mixture of both, would have worked out a lot better. But unfortunately, they didn't do that. So Adventure Time was this pilot that was pitched to Nickelodeon. They turned it down. Pendleton Ward took it to Cartoon Network. They immediately picked it up. And they ordered so many episodes because they had so much faith in this project. Also, they just needed animated content that they were able to air this show pretty well. And it became super popular to the point where very quickly it was picked up for more seasons, had tons of merch, and had a movie on the way. So that's kind of the history of where Adventure Time kind of came from, and why the show was so popular. And when I had started watching it was when it first was brand new. I think it was well into season 2. I really enjoyed the show, and then for whatever reason my parents thought it was like inappropriate or something, so they stopped letting me watch it or something. I don't really get why My parents were kind of strict back in the day and had some dumb rules. But look at me now. I'm an adult and I watch whatever I want. Don't look at my internet history, parents. You will be concerned. No, I'm joking. But, you know, so by the time I went back to the show, it was like well into season 7. And I binged through the whole show, absolutely adored it. And then I was able to catch the final few seasons. I remember actually waiting weeks and months because the final few seasons aired pretty sporadically and they were hard to keep up with. But I was one of the few people who actually did because they would air them very late nights on Cartoon Network and they didn't really advertise them very well. But I still kept up with those episodes. I was still there. I absolutely adored every episode I watched. And I remember very much anticipating the finale. I cried. It was just great. Yeah, it was just a great time as an Adventure Time fan. So that's kind of my memory and love of the show. You know, this video is more just me talking about the love of my experience watching the show than is the actual quality of the show itself. I guess we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, I just remember those were so good times. And that was one of the last shows I actually had. We had either Dish Network or DirecTV. I think it was Dish if I'm remembering right because they were cheapest. We had a cable still. And I was watching things live. And that was one of the last shows I remember actually watching live and probably will be the one of the last ones I will ever remember. I think it is the last one. I'm not really sure what else I watched live as it aired. I don't think there was anything else. Because at the end of the day, I'll be honest, when the Owl House and Amphibia were airing, I pirated them online. Sorry. There's no excuse for these companies still trying to use cable as a means for you to watch their content. Streaming is the future. Let's kill cable. And if you're still using cable as the primary thing, fuck you. That's all I have to say about that. But yeah, let's talk about the quality of the show. So, I think the first couple seasons of the show are so much fun. And it's interesting because I had a very much different experience watching these early episodes of the show back in the day. Where the first 2 seasons to me were my least favorite seasons. Because what I was caring about at the time was the story of Adventure Time and stuff. And I wasn't invested in these one-off adventures. They were still fun and I was entertained by them. And in fact, now a lot of them are my favorite episodes. And some of them were back then. The episode The Eyes specifically is one of my favorite one-off adventures with Finn and Jake where they're just fighting this horse that's watching them while they're asleep. That's super creepy. Super funny episode. But my favorite seasons of the show are now probably 1 through 3. 4 was a good season of the show, but it introduced Flame Princess, which I thought was a great idea at first. But the way they break off that relationship really ruined Finn's character for years. So many fans hated Finn for years. They kind of redeemed his character later on, but still never enough to really make up for what they did with Finn's character. It's hard to describe what they did with that episode if you don't watch it. It's really a terrible episode. It's one of the worst episodes of any show I've ever seen. There's literally no conceivable universe where I will ever understand what the fuck it was the writers tried to do with that episode of the show. Just saying. But I enjoyed all that. And then you get to season 5. And season 5 is where the start of the Downward Spiral went. It's really the end of season 4 on to season 5. See, season 5 was a good season of the show. For the most part. The only thing that happened with this episode, that season, is Adventure Time had kind of always done this in the same way The Simpsons had. Where The Simpsons, after the first couple seasons, started to make episodes about random characters, right, in Springfield. And, a lot of those characters are fan favorites. It makes sense why they want to do that. But a lot of times there was also a lot of characters that you're like, I just don't give a shit about your story and I don't know why this is here. And Adventure Time characters are so weird and bizarre that they were kind of willing to try anything, where Simpsons is a little bit more grounded, right? So at least you could theoretically understand why most of those episodes were made. Where Adventure Time, you're not really able to understand why some of these episodes were made. I don't really understand why we had 2 episodes about Root Beer Guy. I do not care about Root Beer Guy at all. but he's here, I guess, and it just was very irritating and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. That was something that I just never really truly understood. But hey, you know. But at least season 5, most of the episodes were good. There were still a lot of episodes that continued on with the main story, like Finn the human and Jake the dog, kind of after the events of the Lich and stuff. That was really cool. But then you get to season 6, and this is just straight up a bad season of the show. While there are episodes I like within this season, the problem with this season is they went too far with the one-off characters getting random episodes that have no business existing. They just had no business existing at all, but they got episodes, and they were some of the most infuriating episodes of the entire series. It made me want to kill myself. I'm joking, but like, geez. Right? So there's that. And you got a lot of those episodes that were just really irritating, really long, and just not fun. And then you get to season 7, and it kind of redeemed it a little bit. There were some changes to the status quo, Bonnie not getting her kingdom back till like the end of the season. Well, I guess not the end of the season, but you get what I mean. And you know, the mini series with the vampires was great. You know, Adventure Time's mini series at this point were some of the best parts of the show, but it really didn't redeem itself till the final, the season 7 finale, where they actually just started focusing on the story and dealing with stories and wrapping things up, which at this point was necessary. The show was coming to an end, and it was time to start closing things out, closing the book. This is an incredible work of art show with amazing writing and characters and visuals, and it had such a unique world that was always interesting. Even in the one-off episodes about one-off characters that weren't super interesting, it still remained interesting to an extent. But the problem with this show is it just went off the rails at a certain point and killed a lot of fans' interest. And it was able to renew that by the end and give us the best finale that they could have. I think, obviously, it wasn't the best finale that could have been made with the show, just because the simple fact was, you know, if it had ended years ago, like after season 5, or really after season 6, the show would have had a way better ending. But because they had gone on so long and done all these plot points and things, they really couldn't wrap up everything, explain every detail. Also, this is a very complicated universe with very complicated characters that you can't return to everybody, but I feel like they did the best they could have. It was an incredible finale. Really should have been an hour-long finale, but they didn't want to give us that. It should have been really a finale movie, if you ask me, but still. Incredible show that had a great run and legacy. If you really like if you really like good animation, you gotta watch Adventure Time. What an incredible show. I enjoy these characters so much. There's so many quotes from the show I remember. The music's great. There's just so much about it. And this is a show that I revisit a lot. I revisit Avatar: Last Airbender a lot too, but this show I end up revisiting more just because it's a lot easier to just throw on any random episode of the show, where Avatar: Last Airbender it's really not. And it just brings me so much joy.